Hey everybody, this one's going to be a little different than all the other ones. This one's not technical. You know what? I'm going to start it like this. I want to talk about the journey of learning and your pursuit of certification or pursuit of understanding these technical things of network engineering, protocols, and things like that. Some of us are starting, at the beginning of our career. Some of y'all are looking at me midpoint in your career, or some of y'all are looking at me looking at these videos towards the end of your career. And just because you're at the middle or the end of your career, you might be getting started in something new. You know what? It reminds me. I got something hanging on my wall at my office. It says, "Be courageous enough to suck at something new." I think that says a lot. I think a lot of us, we're not showing up. We're not showing up for something because we don't know if we're going to make it. We're afraid of failure. And somebody told me a long time ago, half the battle is showing up. So you know what? I'm gonna move you over to this screen, and this is not Aaron once again showing off his certifications. Okay, we're on a channel. We're talking about technical things, and so I'm talking about the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of understanding, and so really, yeah, that looks like a lot of success, right? And some people will say, "Oh, none of it." I've heard somebody tell me once, "Aaron, there's only 4 letters that matter, CCIE." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I feel you. That's what I want too." Or JNCIE, 5 letters, or whatever it is. So, some of y'all are thinking, "No, if I could just get the CCNA, I'm golden." Yeah, you know what? It felt really good. I felt like $1 million the day I got a CCNA, and that's okay. However, whatever your goal is what it's about. And so, but you know what? I'm not talking about success today. I'm talking about the journey. I'm talking about the pursuit. I am talking about success, but I'm talking about something else too. I'm talking about failure and how do we deal with failure. And so, I showed you this because I really want to show you this. So here's my Cisco certification tracking of all my exams that I've taken over my career. And really, I'm not talking about my certifications and my successes. I'm talking about a recent failure, another one. Actually, this wasn't too recent, a few years ago. Another one. Now, along the way, you have some successes. But along the way, you also have some failures. And, I just want to draw your attention to some of these things. Because, a lot of us walk around, with our shiny badges on our chest or our certificates on our wall. But we don't, who wants to talk about their failures? I don't necessarily. But I'm just putting it out there to encourage you. Okay, and to level set, for goodness sakes, and be real that, you hear it all the time, but it's true, is that fail is the first attempt in learning. And behind every successful person is a lot of failure and setback and times when they had to get back up, dust themselves off, and keep going, And so wanted to just show you some of that. Let me draw your attention to some of these. For instance, I think there was one somewhat recent. Yeah, okay. So back a few years ago, when I was trying to recertify my service provider, CCNP, and I failed at one of the exams, September 29th. 2014. And look, November 21st, 2014. So you just have to stay at it. You've got to just keep going if you want it bad enough. And if it's for you, if the time is right, if it's something that you're really wanting to go after, and it's something that you need for your job, then you're going to stay at it. And so a few months later, I passed it. I'll go down here. I got my CCNA early on in my career in 2000, but my CCDA was a failure. And look, went back 4 days later and passed it because I knew why I passed it. Excuse me, I knew why I failed it. Okay, and that's another thing I'll just mention briefly in a moment is how to get up and how to move forward. Here's another thing. Let me show you this. Juniper certifications. Had a failure on my pro level SP, and then hit the books and went back less than a month later and passed it. Okay, so it's really just about it's about a lot of things. It's, do you love what you're doing? Do you really enjoy whatever it is that you're studying? It's really good to try to cultivate a love for learning, to try to enjoy what you're doing. It's really a painstaking process if you're putting yourself through the rigors of ingesting all this technical information if you really just don't enjoy it. And so evaluate that. And another thing, when you're going after something that's highly technical, takes a lot of time and all that. I remember somebody a while back, a guy that went on to get his CCIE. I worked with him years ago. He said, I just don't have the motivation. He told me that. He had a CCNP. I think I had a CCNA. But I said, why don't you go on for your CCIE? He said, Aaron, I just don't have the motivation right now. He was being honest, And it takes that. It takes motivation. I think it takes time. It takes money. And you can maybe substitute money with resources. If you have the resources available to you, lab gear, the resources that you need, books, materials. A lot of these things you might be able to get your hands on a lot of books, but if you don't have the time to read them because you just had your third child and you've got three kids under the age of 5, or something like this, or you're working a second job to make ends meet, you just don't have the time. Maybe you've got a lot of money, maybe you've got a lot of resources. Maybe you have the motivation to do it. You really are amped and ready to go, but you just don't have the time. Or you could flip that. Maybe you have a lot of time, but you just would rather watch movies or play games. You just don't feel motivated to dive deep into technical material. And so it's really like the planets align when all these things come together, and you can really make a concerted effort to move forward in this goal that you have, and so some of these things take a long concerted effort, like the expert level certifications are going to take even someone who has a CCNP or multiple professional level certifications. It's still going to take them to go at it for like a year straight. We've heard the stories. I'll share another story. My boss offered the engineering group a while back at a previous job I had, $250 if you could get your CCNA, a bonus, $2,500 if you could get your CCNP, and CCNP. Yeah, you were going to get paid if you got the CCNP. $250 for a CCNA, $2,500 for a CCNP, and $15,000 for a CCIE. Well, I had a CCNA, I had a CCDA, and I was pursuing my CCNP, but I had just gotten started. And I was still developing in my understanding of network protocols and technologies and things like that. So I was taking 4, 5, 6 months to go through each one of the different CCNP exams. Back then it was switch, route, remote access, and T-shoot. Well, I think I was on my first, maybe second exam, and I had a deadline to get this bonus of $2,500. I only had a few months to secure that bonus and get that CCNP and get that bonus. There was no way I was going to do it. So, there was a lot of motivation and I wanted that, but I needed more time to understand what I was studying in order to go and pass the test. And so also sometimes you don't want to be rushed. You want to fully appreciate everything it is that you're learning because you really enjoy the journey of learning. You're not just about letters and badges. You're about the information, the knowledge, and what you're going to gain for your work experience because of everything that you've all the work that you've put in. You know. All right, so that's that. Another thing I want to talk about: what happened? What do you do when you fail? We talked about that a little bit. But you know what? Sometimes you need to take a step back, regroup, think about what happens, or excuse me, what happened, and go at it again. Now, just a little bit of practical advice. There was a time when I lost my CCNP back in 2006. And I was okay with that. My career was changing. I was going into the systems administration, doing a lot of Unix, sysadmin. I was doing a lot of voice over IP, even vulnerability analysis. And I'm gonna tell you what, when you get deep into voice over IP and telephony, you forget how to route. you start forgetting a lot of the deeper concepts of routing protocols. You know, if you're deep into telephony and things like that. So I was going after a CCVP at the time, CCNP voice as they changed the name. But anyway, I was okay with letting the route switch stuff go by because it's kind of hard to follow two very different tracks sometimes. But my career changed. I got into the service provider arena. I was deep into route switch again, and I was kicking myself for letting that CCNP fall by the wayside. So I went after it again. I went after that CCNP route switch, otherwise known as the enterprise track. Well, by that time, I was a few years into the service provider arena, and I was forgetting some of the finer points of desktop switching and Mac security and a lot of the things about switching. I passed the route exam. I went back, and as you saw on some of those failures I had, I failed the switching exam. Well, the first time I thought, I've passed this years ago. I could do it again. Well, you're not going to just walk into a Cisco exam, unprepared and pass it. Not in my experience. I usually feel very accomplished when I walk away with a passing grade on a Cisco exam or a Juniper exam for that matter. And so I failed it. Well, then I studied, went back and failed it again. And I was pretty close. But by that time, I really wanted to go into the service provider direction. And I really needed to go in the service provider direction for my career, for my job, for my day-to-day job. So at that point, I'm not trying to justify why I didn't stay in the fight for the CCNP enterprise. But at that time, back in 2014, 2015, it just didn't make sense for me to continue on. Now, maybe I could have stayed in it and gotten it. But I think there might have been another exam I had to pass after that anyway. So all that to say, know what direction you want to go in. Don't be so scattered that you've got yourself spread so thin that you can't give the due diligence to whatever direction you really need to be going in. So it's okay to let something go by. I think I'm just giving you my opinion for something better for you. So it's okay to let something go if you need to be focusing on something that's actually better for you at that time. All right. Now, what I would suggest, if you get that failing grade at the testing center, I was telling somebody this recently on Reddit. When you get that failing grade, and I used to tell my colleagues at work this a lot because I did it and it works. Don't sit in your car and sulk for too long. Maybe for a few minutes, lick your wounds. But don't sit in the car in the parking lot outside of the test center and just get depressed and, spend a few days bummed out over the fact that you failed. I would suggest get a piece of paper. Back then it was only paper. But get your phone on your notepad, send yourself an audio message, and brain dump those questions that kicked your butt on that test you just failed. Write those things down. Those things that you were weak on. Write them down. Write those questions. They're fresh in your head. And also that grade sheet. If you've got a 50%, a 75%, an 85% on different categories, don't worry about the 85%. You're already good there. Don't go back and restudy that stuff. Go back, find the lowest or the two lowest categories, the 40% and the 55%, and look up everything you can on that for the next week. Also, over the next couple days, when you're driving home from the testing center, pull over on the side of the road. Write down those things that come to your mind. That question, like I said before, that question that you knew you were just like a deer in headlights on the test, and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't study this enough, and you bombed it. You bombed those types of questions. Write those down. What you're going to have after about 3 or 4 days, when you're recollecting the things that you were weak in on that test, you're going to have a nice list of of topics that you can now dive into. And I would suggest, like you've seen on some of my return visits where I passed it a month later, a few days later, whatever it is, whatever you think you need to get yourself over that hump, to get yourself up to 85, 90% in that category, when you feel strong in that, you've given yourself enough time to cover those topics, get back in the driver's seat. Schedule that next exam and give it another try. Okay? You'll probably find out that you're darn close to passing or you passed. A lot of us want to focus on our strengths, but we don't want to focus on our weaknesses. Master the weaknesses. Somebody told me that a long time ago, or they will master you. Hey, I hope this is encouraging. I hope you're enjoying this channel I'm trying to put together. Subscribe if you want to get updates. Comment on the videos if they're meaningful. If you think there's something else that you would like me to be hitting on a little more, let me know. All right? Till next time, thank you.